USD-457, I'd like to know about it. Even though it's been stayed.
I don't think it's that we're not educating them constitutionally, it's that we're not being funded constitutionally.
Well, if we shut down July 1st, we do that under some kind of mandate. And that's what I'd like to know about.
We'll get you all, we'll keep you informed as we get the information. That's the best information that we have right now.
Okay, thank you, KJ, I appreciate it. Thank you, Dr. Carlin. Okay, Leanne, did you have anything else you wanted to add before we had our discussion on the readiness program?
I'll just kind of go over this summary just a little bit. We had a board member who wanted more clarification on what you would be voting for tonight. So I put together a one-page summary of what the group kind of talked about last time. Maybe to summarize a few points here. But the first grade readiness and second grade readiness are pretty much the same thing. It's kindergarten and first grade. I get confused with that sometimes when I talk about first grade readiness and second grade readiness. But the committees, they looked at essential learning outcomes to develop their rubric. Then they created a report card that mirrored that because they wanted parents to see the same thing. Now, the report card might have a few extra things on it that the exit criteria doesn't, because the exit criteria just identifies those essential elements that a child needs to pass on at its grade level. The report card might have a few introductory things that would be essential for the next grade level, but that's not necessarily important for them to be on. They also ask for mandatory retention if students don't meet those outcomes on the rubric. And then along with that comes a huge parent component. So that's really the first and second grade readiness. Third grade readiness we really didn't talk about last time very much because that's what the second grade is doing. And second grade, by that time, not very many people are using that rubric because there's not very many retentions at that level. But teachers did create a rubric at that level just as a conversation piece that they're going to have with parents if there is maybe an expected retention there. But we do have a process in place now for first and second grade readiness that if a student barely passes the rubric, that within the school itself, they can make a determination if the parent wants to retain the child. So that's something that's new this year. But as our plan to move forward, we're hoping that each year we develop a standards-based report card. Third grade is currently trying to get theirs together. They haven't finished that this summer. But every year we would hope after that to create a standard-based report card. We're doing it the right way this time. This is something we wish we could have done with the standards implemented at the kindergarten level. Moving on up the line, we just didn't have the time to be able to do that. But we're taking our time with this one. But every year we go back and revise this and look at it. Teacher teams get together with parents and administrators to make sure that we're doing the right things for kids. If we made a mistake with that exit criteria, we want to fix it the next year. So we're not just creating it and leaving it, we're revising it and looking at it every year. So that's basically it.
Are there any questions or discussion on this? How is this affecting the grade cards and how they will change? I feel like we probably covered that, but.
Yeah, it did change a little bit, and it was basically some parents that were on the committee that they really wanted more meaning to those grade cards. And as we looked at, first and second grade having the A's, the B's, the C's, I think the parents quickly found out that that didn't really mean anything to a teacher because they were all grading something very different. So now all of those grades are based on what outcomes the kids have, what those indicators are on the grade card, not just an overall grade, let's say an A for communications. What does that mean?
But you're still using a type of letter.
Right.
So
Yes.
I guess what is the point of, and I'm not trying to argue, I'm trying to understand
Sure.
it better, and for the kids, because I'm seeing it from a parent side too. How does that continue to motivate kids to work hard? Because they're not gonna look, and I think first and second grade, they're not looking at that, they are, motivate them and to understand that, because they're not gonna look at that benchmark and say, oh, I can count to 100, that motivates me to work harder. And letter grade and that consistency where they'll get letter grades eventually, to motivate the kids to continue to understand their grade point, I guess.
Well, before the grades were on percentage.
Right.
Now you're looking at the specific indicator, how well did the student do on that
Right.
specific indicator? So they're getting an E, a B, or an M on each indicator, as opposed to, we're gonna give you an overall grade because overall you mastered communication. That didn't really tell you what pieces of communication you
Right.
did well with and which pieces
Right.
you didn't.
And I guess my concern was at that level, in the classroom, I guess they're looking at that, but when a kid goes to look at their grade card, what's the motivating factor for that, and how does it show, their effort and their behavior in school versus just whether they met that benchmark?
Correct. And one of the things Dr. Watts is talking about is talking about the character standards. And what we've tried to do with the character standards is put those in a separate place on the report card. So we're still measuring perseverance, how well you're being on task, those types of things, but they're not in your overall grade of communications and math. They're totally separated so that, you know, what you're doing performance-wise doesn't cloud with what you're doing behavior-wise in class.
I just want to make sure that's not lost on the report card, because I think it's important for kids to understand that if they work hard, they're gonna be rewarded. And in the past, it's been with a good grade, even though, plus reaching that skill that they need to have. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Okay. So I guess that's why I had more questions, because I needed to understand school better.
Leanne, I have some concern with the mandatory retention is not a consideration at the third grade level as an absolute. I guess my concern lies in that when I think about our population of students, I think maybe like a lot of the new immigrants that are coming in, a lot of times we have questions about even what grade level to place them in. I understand that retention at that grade is not recommended because there's some detrimental psychological effects of that, but as an absolute, I feel really concerned that it's absolutely not considered, considering our
The third grade
population.
level?
Yeah.
The committee's really looked at that, and they felt like we were going to catch most of our kids at kindergarten, first grade level, that if we did mandatory retention after that, we needed to have that conversation with the parents. So,
Don't you feel like they have a very transitory population now? That concerns me as an absolute.
Well, it's mandatory, so you can still retain. It's just not absolutely required.
Goes
So
back to
the
that
parents
team
agree,
decision.
so yeah.
People can still be retained.
Oh, absolutely,
yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That completely changes
and
it.
at the second grade level,
Okay.
we have the rubric in place just as a conversation piece.
Okay.
And if the teacher feels like that maybe there's a concern there, she gets the rubric out, they look at it, and they make a decision together. You know, the teacher, the parent, the principal, they need to bring them in, but it's a school decision, it's a team decision.
Okay, that makes me so much more, because I just overall talked with, with a number of different teachers, and they mentioned that, holding back isn't necessarily something that we do, or that is highly, it's frowned upon, and I understand the reasons
Yeah.
behind that, but I just want to make sure
It's
that.
just not being
Okay. Thank you.
I do have some concerns that I wanted to share with the rest of the board. I do like very much that we have established some common criteria for important skills at each of the grade levels, and we have made common assessments and coordinated the grade cards with what we are actually testing. I think it's much needed that we've improved our parent communication with the teachers and understanding what their students are doing, what their children are doing in their grades, and what skills are needed for the future. I think it increases the focus on learning at those levels. And I like that they're more tied to the outcomes that we need. I think it's good that we provided more guidelines for expectations for the next grade teachers, that most of the students who come into that grade have some concerns though. And primarily they deal with the mandatory aspect of the retention or promotion decision. The last meeting that I was at, one of the principals indicated that while there was a student who had barely passed the rubric, and the parent and the teacher both felt that that student should probably be retained, but they promoted that student despite that because the rubric said if you pass it, you get promoted. And I understand that that has been somewhat addressed in the process in place. But I am very concerned about the amount of judgment that we are taking away from the people who are most involved with that child's education, the parents and the teachers. In that case, I'm really concerned that we wouldn't have elevated that or raised that or made a different decision in that child's case. I'm hoping that only happened once, but once is too many times. To make the wrong decisions in these cases can have really long-lasting effects on children. Retention especially has a very long-lasting effect on a child. There's a lot of research that shows that it affects the child's self-image, it affects the image that other people have of that child, and how they see that child for learning in the future. There's an increased dropout rate for students who have been retained. And at some point in the future, there's leveling despite whether you retain them or don't retain them. They end up about the same place they would have anyway, 5 or 6 years into the future. In looking at this and considering the amount of time that a student spends in school with their teacher and the amount of time that students spend with their family, it's not even close. The parents and the family are with the students about 4 or 5 times longer than the student is with the teacher in school. I think that the parents should have the right to make the final decision in this matter, and that it shouldn't be mandatory by the district. This is something that will be carried on for the students' future. And the other aspect of this is we're talking about students who probably are between about 5 and 8 years old. We all know that there's a lot of developmental changes over which the student has no control in learning at that age. And we also know that students can make great strides in very short periods of time, and yet we are making these big decisions for them based on 3 tests on presumably 3 different days as to how they did on various aspects of that rubric. So I would like to see the word mandatory removed from the program and replaced with the word recommended. I think that the parents should have that final decision to make, not the district.
Dr. Carlin, our policy right now reads that it's the principal's decision. Is that correct?
Correct.
Any other questions, comments? Mark, you look like you're comfortable.
I am. Thank you. Good. I had a lot of concerns, very similar to Jean's, on this program, and I know sharp teachers and administrators working on it. One of the things I understand from our last presentation on this topic was that the mandatory retention element was basically removed. That's been a revision to the program.
Mandatory retention or promotion?
I'm sorry, mandatory promotion.
Sorry, I interrupted you.
No, that's good. I could misspeak very easily. And that gives me some comfort. That together with a sense that some of the standards for mandatory retention are low enough, if I can put it in those terms, that the original discussion of the tool, where we've got in some cases cultural or family situations where, irregardless of any facts or opinions, my child will not be retained, kind of approach in that natural collaboration between the teacher, the parent, and the principal, was sort of undermining some of our broader initiatives and purposes when we get a child that isn't equipped for the next grade going into the next grade. I do think if there's judgment on some of those non-quantifiable elements like socializing, things like that with a student, that the parent and the teacher in collaboration with that principal ought to be able to decide to retain the child at these early stages, again, for some of the reasons Jean articulated on if you're going to use the term redshirt your student, the earlier the better. That's what I was hoping to see, and that's what I understand the system to be, that mandatory promotion is now an item of discussion, not a mandate of the rule. That gives me a lot of comfort on some of the concerns, again, similar to what Jean was articulating. And somewhere in there, I think there must be a balance between accomplishing the need and the purposes that have been described and worked on by the teachers and retaining that discussion and judgment and collaboration between the parent and the teacher and the principal. And I'm hopeful, assuming or relying on the fact that we have made the adjustments I described, and I'm pretty in favor of it. I'm not in favor if we haven't eliminated mandatory promotion.
It looks like from the summary on both first and second grade that it says process in place for students who pass the rubric, but parents want retention considered. So it looks like that's
Well,
out.
in any level, if there's mandatory promotion, then there's got to be a concern.
Those are the two with the mandatory retention. Third grade does not have mandatory retention.
Yeah.
You know,
So I
you
guess
said
what you're saying,
his
first grade
comment
readiness
was-
and second grade readiness.
Yeah.
Great.
I see the mandatory promotion or retention as two sides of the same coin. And in one case, we apparently are allowing some judgment to make a different determination than the rubric would otherwise. But in the other case, we aren't, and I think that we should.
And I would just say that it is a very delicate thing as we delve into the family circle and the culture both at home and school in whatever mandates we may come up with. And somewhere originally there was a challenge by the teachers to, number one, engage in that family conversation of what is necessary in order for the student to be successful in the next grade level as a minimum. And that collaboration is pure gold. I think it performed and functioned to that thing that historically has happened with the district and many families for years. But it put it in the form of a rubric and conversation. And when we get to the end of that school year, there should be no surprises. And so, assuming there's no surprises, if the minimums to be, for the student to be successful in the next grade level, I'm talking particularly kindergarten to first grade. And those standards are pretty minimal, pretty basic. And I understand that they have been adjusted that way, in part because of some of the things identified. The students are pretty resilient, and they can respond to that new teacher and that new environment to a certain degree. But if they don't meet a minimum standard, they really pull the whole classroom in. And that student may take a significant amount of time in that differentiated teaching from the teacher that otherwise could be applied to other students in the classroom. So that standard, I think, has got to be a pretty good thing. And one side of the coin, I think it's pretty critical to reserve that judgment, particularly on those unquantifiable things between the parent, the teacher, and the principal. And to undermine that with a mandatory rubric promotion, I think we have an example of New England that I'm aware of. But again, one is too many. Where that needs to be tweaked, and I think that my understanding is the process, the people on the team recognize that. It's kind of
Tim, Tim, did you
No,
want to
go
say?
ahead.
No, go ahead.
No, go ahead, ladies first.
Well, I think my concern too is that, I don't think a teacher should have to fight for, to me, this gives teachers just a little bit of, I don't want to say power, but I don't really know what the right word is. I don't think a teacher should have to argue necessarily for their reasoning to retain a kid. This gives them something that they can say, look, your kids, and I think with Mark, it's something that I have personal experience, because my nephew's been going through this all year. He's not met the rubric. The teacher's been trying to work with my niece and giving her suggestions, how to get him to speed, tutoring, just different things throughout the school year. But at the end of the year, if he's not meeting that rubric, the teacher says he's not meeting the rubric. And, and then the teacher doesn't have to argue or continue to try and make their point. I mean, I just think it kind of takes the power away from the teacher if you don't have like a certain level of standard that your child has to meet, because it also holds the teacher responsible as well. I just think it's a valuable tool for both. Because I don't know. I see your point, Jean. I just feel like it would take away some of the power of the teacher and just that checks and balances that can and has brought.
How do we change the wording if we want to do that, like Gene request? I mean, are we at the point tonight that we're making the decision that this is no longer a pilot program, and now we move that forward from here
I believe so.
forever, I guess?
Well, nothing's forever. I mean, if as Leanne mentioned, the group will be monitoring the data every year, and if there becomes an issue with it, they can always come back to the board. But we are asking you to say, we are taking this out of the pilot, we'll adjust our policy to have language so that it'll be supported in the board's policy if that's how the board decides to continue. We've been doing this 3 years. I would tell you to look at the information that the committee looked at. Nothing is perfect, but if you look at our number of retentions, they're down. If you look at the parent communication, it's greatly improved. If you look at the skills that we're focusing on, we're doing a better job on focusing on what's important. I think we have parents that are getting more actively engaged earlier to help make sure that their kids are making progress towards what the teachers have identified as important. And nobody wants to retain a student. But I think rather than retain them when they're in third grade, like was proposed at the state level, I think our folks came up with a proactive approach, and they're really modeling that continuous improvement. They're looking at that system every year, and the
provide stuff for the parent to help them throughout the year, I think that puts some responsibility back on the parents to put some effort into it and try to help their kids at home. And I still don't know if mandatory is the right word, but having that there, I feel like that would motivate me as a parent to say, okay, I need to put some extra work in at home because it's gonna come down to that rubric and making that decision. So I feel like that would take a little bit of responsibility off the teacher too. Parents and the teachers need to be working to help their kids, and I think that's motivating, or I would hope it's motivating for the parents to take some responsibility in helping their kids. I'm still back and forth on that, but that's one point that came out from some of the data.
I mean, some of this is pretty basic stuff. Kids get points for coming in and sitting down. That's points I can get.
And I liked Mark's point too, that every kid is important, but if you have a kid that it's not the best for him to move up to that next grade, but it's also interferes with every other kid in the class who, even though they're an average kid or doing well in the classroom, it's still taking away from their education, so neither side is benefiting. So that's also important, and that kid may have moved up simply because the parents weren't willing or didn't understand or whatever reason, but it's also taking away from the other kids in the class.
What you just said is what drove this to be a teacher-driven initiative. That is what we were hearing at the conference, at the faculty meeting. So that's what started this. And so that's the first reason why I'm in favor of this. It was teacher-driven. And the second reason is that it uses a good, objective springboard to, like Dana said, take the responsibility off of the subjectiveness of the teacher and make it more black and white, more of an easier, just an easier decision for the parents to understand. And importantly, it was supported by an excellent committee. I mean, these are top-notch teachers in our district that worked on this, and they're top in their field. They know way more about education than I do. And this committee is done a lot of work with this, and they're in favor of it. And the last thing is, I think an appropriate academic setting is good for student morale and teacher effectiveness. And so that's the major reason I'm in favor of this program. I want the student to feel like they're in the right setting, because I think that that's best for their, best foundation for their academic achievement. So those are the reasons why I'm strongly in favor of this program. Is there a motion? I move that we approve the readiness program for first grade, second grade, and third grade.
As presented.
As presented. Is there a second?
A second.
There's a motion by Gloria to approve the readiness program as presented, seconded by Dana. Is there any other discussion?
Just clarification, I thought we were just doing K and 1. She said 3, 2, 1, and K.
Well, reads as first grade readiness, which is actually kindergarten to first grade. Second grade readiness is first grade to second grade. Okay.
See,
And
our
that's
agenda
their-
says
K1.
approval readiness program K through 1.
Mhm.
And that was my earlier question, is it K through 1 or is it K through 3?
Well, and it kind of gets tricky, because when we talk about readiness, we really aren't talking kindergarten readiness, we're originally talked about first and second grade readiness, and they're now at the third grade level, where there's no mandatory retention, no mandatory promotion, but they're developing the standards-based report card, and they have the rubric to help guide, so it's,
Just to make sure it matches.
yeah, it's probably not labeled clearly on the agenda. It probably is a first through third grade readiness, which involves grades K2.
Clarification.
Yeah,
I
good
want to make
question.
sure I know what I'm voting for.
And that's why we provided you the summary too, to make sure.
Yeah, I understand, I just clarify, that's all I'm doing.
So is it K1 or is it
K2.
basically Jean has what she was hoping for in third grade readiness, because there's no mandatory retention or promotion. It's a conversation.
Right. Third grade readiness occurs during the second grade year.
Third grade readiness is second grade, so it would be K2.
I would also bring up, one of the things that I read about, when I was looking at this and doing some research, and that is that retaining a child for an entire full year is the most expensive way to improve readiness for the next grade, because you're repeating that entire year. There are other alternatives, and summer school was one of them. There are other intensive programs. We have chosen in this area, this time of budget constraints, to do the most expensive method for improving readiness, as opposed to one that may work just as well, not have the negative aspects of retention for individual children. And, you know, I think there's so many aspects of this program that I like, that I think are good and that we have improved. But I think this is not necessarily the best solution for our district, especially considering the demographics that we have and the various different groups that we have. Retention is statistically much more likely with minority students, and I think that we have, a great deal of those students, as well as with ESL students. So,
Jean, how do we, if I could ask a question, how do the teachers deal with that situation where, to use my wife and I as an example, Melanie attends all of the meetings and all the collaboration, and, well, I guess that is a good example. And then I step in and I say, no one's retaining my child. And somehow, in that family environment, my say prevails, which isn't wrong, but, that's what I say, it's a very good one. But in certain cultural settings, that is what some teachers have run into, where all of the collaboration sort of went out the window when it came down to somebody making a decision at the family level, and one making a decision who wasn't involved in the meetings.
right, and that's why this program has some aspects of it